Hello everyone and welcome back to another anatomy video. This is Dr. Aiyan from the Veterinary Anatomy channel. Today we will talk about the shoulder girdle muscles of the horse. So let's get started. So as we mentioned, shoulder girdle muscles could be divided into two groups, the superficial muscle group and the deep muscle group. In some other anatomical books, they may divide them into a dorsal and ventral muscle groups. And now let's start with the first muscle highlighted in green. As you can see here, this is what's called the trapezius muscle. The trapezius muscle has two parts. The cervical part, this one here, and this is here the thoracic part of the trapezius muscle, or in Latin we can name this one as Trapezius and this one Trapezius thoracis. Let's start with the cervical part of the trapezius muscle. The cervical part of the trapezius muscle originates from the median ruff here and from the knuckle ligament in this area and inserts to the spine of the scapula, scapular spine, inserts to the spine of the scapula here. While the thoracic part of the trapezius muscle originates from the supraspinous ligament. Supraspinous ligament, as you remember, is that strong ligament connect the top of the spinous processes together. So the thoracic part of the trapezius muscle originates from this ligament and inserts also to the spine of the scapula. The picture here is not 100% correct. If you watch the other videos we uploaded about the same topic of the horse, you will find that the thoracic part of the trapezius muscle inserts to the dorsal third of the scapular spine, while the cervical one, yes, inserts to the complete, scapular spine, as is mentioned here. So this is the spine of the scapula here, and this is the insertion area of both parts of the trapezius muscle. The trapezius muscle is innervated by ventral branches of the accessory nerve. If you remember, the accessory nerve is the cranial nerve number 11. And the function of this muscle, of course, the function of all muscles we are going to talk about today is to connect the forelimb to the trunk. But the main function of this muscle, trapezius muscle, is to elevate the shoulder and move the scapula craniodorsally or caudodorsally. Craniodorsally if we're talking about the cervical part, caudodorsally if we're talking about the thoracic part. So this was the trapezius muscle. Now we will move to the next muscle, which is the Omotransversarius muscle. Omotransversarius muscle, think about the name. Omo refers to shoulder, transversarius comes from the transverse processes of the cervical vertebra. From the transverse processes of the cervical vertebra. So this muscle extends between the shoulder up to this area of the neck here. The origin of this muscle in all animals is actually the acromion. Acromion, if you remember, is the process from the distal end of the scapular spine. So the acromion in the horse is absent. There is no acromion in the horse. And that's why this muscle originates from the shoulder fascia in this area. Again, please go ahead and watch the videos, the other videos where we dissected this muscle and talked about this muscle in details. So you will find that this muscle comes from the fascia in this region. Not only this muscle is also fused with the with this muscle here, the cleidomastoid muscle, which we are going to talk about later. So again, the origin is from this area. Insertion is the transverse processes of the cervical vertebra number 2 up to the cervical vertebra number 4. This is the Omotransversarius muscle. Innervation of this muscle occurs by the ventral branches of the cervical spinal nerves. Function, look at the origin and insertion again. This muscle moves the forelimb forward. If the forelimb is fixed on the ground, in this case, contraction of this muscle will move the head and the neck or turn it laterally. This was the Omotransversarius muscle. Now let's move to the next muscle, which is hidden there under the trapezius muscle. This is the rhomboideus muscle. The rhomboideus muscle originates from the knuckle and the dorsoscapular ligament from C2 to T8, the thoracic vertebra number 8, and inserts to the medial surface of the scapular cartilage and the medial surface of the dorsal border of the scapula. If you want to see the rhomboideus muscle completely, in this case, we have to cut and dissect the trapezius muscle, move it up and down or remove it, and in this case, this is what you can find, the rhomboideus muscle. The rhomboideus muscle in the horse is divided also into two parts. The cervical part of the rhomboideus muscle and the thoracic part of the rhomboideus muscle, or Rhomboideus cervicis or Rhomboideus thoracis. The cervical part of the rhomboideus muscle is that one which originates from the median ruff there, while the thoracic part of the rhomboideus muscle is the one which originates from the dorsoscapular ligament, as we mentioned before. Both parts inserts to the scapular cartilage. Again, please don't forget, to the medial surface of the scapular cartilage and to the medial surface of the dorsal border of the scapula. The rhomboideus muscle, it's innervated by the ventral branches of the cervical and the thoracic spinal nerves in this region. The function of this muscle is to draw the scapula dorsally, as you can see, and especially the cervical part of the rhomboideus muscle is there to elevate the head and the neck. The next muscle which we would like to talk about here is this muscle highlighted in green called the Latissimus dorsi. It's a very famous muscle. It's very broad and flat muscle, cover the lateral wall of the thoracic cavity, and that's why in some books they name it the broad muscle of the thorax. This muscle, Latissimus dorsi, originates from the thoracolumbar fascia. Thoracolumbar fascia is the connective tissue in the thoraco and lumbar region here, which forms a very strong identified fascia called the thoracolumbar fascia. This muscle originates from this fascia and inserts to the teres major tuberosity. I put these points here to remind you that the teres major tuberosity is located on the medial surface of the humerus. So the insertion of the Latissimus dorsi, the teres major tuberosity, that means the same insertion of the teres major muscle. The Latissimus dorsi is innervated by the thoracodorsal nerve, which is a branch from the brachial plexus for the innervation of this muscle. The function of this muscle is to retract the forelimb, to flex the shoulder joint. The next muscle we would like to mention here is the brachiocephalic muscle. The brachiocephalic muscle in all animals divided into 3 parts. All of them start with the same word, cleido. In the horse, this muscle has just 2 parts. The drawing here in this picture is not 100% correct because normally at this level here, we should have what's called the clavicular insertion. It's a connective tissue where all 3 parts, and the horse, the 2 parts originate. The 2 parts in the horse called the cleidomastoid muscle, this one, and toward the brachium is the cleidobrachialis muscle. The cleidomastoid muscle inserts, again, originate from the clavicular insertion and inserts from the name, cleidomastoid, to the mastoid process of the skull. While the cleidobrachialis muscle originate again from the clavicular insertion and inserts to the cranial surface of the humerus. Cranial surface of the humerus. Again, brachiocephalic muscle has 2 parts in the horse. This one toward the brachium, toward the humerus, is the cleidobrachialis muscle. Toward the head is the cleidomastoid muscle. This muscle is also innervated by the ventral branches of the cervical vertebra. Look at the origin and insertion, or the course of this muscle, you will understand the function of it. The first function is to move the forelimb cranially forward if the forelimb is fixed, so contraction of this muscle can turn the head and the neck laterally. Now let's move to the next muscle, and here I would like to talk about the pectoral muscles. In general, we have 2 pectoral muscles: the superficial pectoral muscle and the deep pectoral muscle. The superficial pectoral muscle has again 2 parts, pars transversus and pars descendens. In a cranial view like this, we can see the 2 parts of the superficial pectoral muscle. The one highlighted in green here is the pars descendens of the superficial pectoral muscle, or musculus pectoralis superficialis in Latin. So the one highlighted here is the pars descendens of the superficial pectoral muscle. This muscle, or this part, originates from the costal cartilages from rib number 1 to number 6, and from the manubrium sterni. If you look at this picture, this is the sternum here. The first part, or the first vernebra of the sternum, called the manubrium sterni. So this muscle originates from this part of the sternum and from the first few ribs. The next muscle, and the same muscle here, of course, inserts to the deltoid tuberosity, where the deltoid tuberosity in this picture, deltoid tuberosity and the crest of the humeral crest. This is the deltoid tuberosity, and from it down to the body, this is the humeral crest. This is the insertion of the descendants part of the superficial pectoral muscle. If we move to the next muscle here, highlighted in green, this is the other part of the superficial pectoral muscle called the transverse part of the superficial pectoral muscle. This muscle originates from the costal cartilages number 1 to 6 again, and from the manubrium sterni, and inserts to the forearm fascia, as you can see there. and so partially to the cranial surface of the humerus. This was the pars transversus of the superficial pectoral muscle. This muscle is innervated, both parts. So the superficial pectoral muscle is innervated by the cranial pectoral nerves, which are also branches from the brachial plexus. Let's move now to the deep pectoral muscle. This is the deep pectoral muscle. The deep pectoral muscle originates from the sternum, from the complete sternum, and from the distal ends of the ribs number 4 to 9, and inserts to the major and minor tubercles of the humerus. Look at the humerus here. In the lateral view, we can see just the lateral tubercle, which is the major tubercle of the humerus. The minor tubercle is on the other side, or the lesser tubercle. Yeah, in some books they name it minor or lesser tubercle of the humerus. This muscle, the deep pectoral muscle, inserts to both of them. In the horse. This muscle is innervated by the caudal pectoral nerves, which are also parts or branches from the brachial plexus. The function of both deep and superficial pectoral muscles is to connect the forelimb to the body, again like other muscles of the shoulder girdle, and to adduct the forelimb toward the body. Now, if you allow me, I will move to the next muscle, which is the ventral serrated muscle. The ventral serrated muscle is divided into two parts again. The cervical part of the ventral serrated muscle highlighted in green here, and the next slide will show us the thoracic part of the ventral serrated muscle, this one here. Let's stay by the cervical part of the ventral serrated muscle. The cervical part of the ventral serrated muscle originate from the transverse processes of C4 to C7, as you can see highlighted here, and inserts to the serrated face, if you remember. If not, go ahead and watch the video we uploaded, about the anatomy of the skeleton of the forelimb. And we said that on the medial surface of the scapula, you can find the triangular surface here called the serrated face, which is the insertion of both, actually, the cervical and the thoracic part of the ventral serrated muscle. So, cervical part of the ventral serrated muscle originates from the transverse processes here and inserts to the serrated face of the scapula medially, and that's why I draw like points here to let you know that we're talking about the medial surface, something we cannot see in this view, in the lateral view. This part of the ventral serrated muscle is innervated by the ventral branches of the cervical spinal nerves. The other part of the ventral serrated muscle, the thoracic part or of the ventral serrated muscle, this one highlighted in green, originates from the ribs, actually from the first 9 ribs in the horse. As you can see here, from this level, look at this picture here, and inserts to the same area, which is the serrated face of the scapula medially there. The thoracic part of the ventral serrated muscle is innervated by the long thoracic nerve. The long thoracic nerve is another branch from the brachial plexus. Go ahead and watch the video we uploaded about the brachial plexus. Perhaps it was like in the dog. So the thoracic part of the ventral serrated muscle is innervated by the long thoracic nerve, which during the dissection you will find this nerve moving on the external surface of this muscle. The function of the cervical, let's start with the cervical one. The cervical part of the ventral serrated muscle is to elevates or rises the neck and the head upward. While the function of the thoracic part of the ventral serrated muscle, think, before I say the function, think about the origin and insertion again of this muscle, and you will find that this muscle is connected to all ribs here, the same from the other side, right side. So contraction of this muscle will move the ribs away from the midline of the body, away from the axis, which will increase the volume of the thoracic cavity, and that's why this muscle helps or supports the inspiration. So this was everything about the topic today. Of course, there are some other muscles which we cannot see in this picture, and that's why we didn't mention them. But again, if you go and find the videos, the other videos where we dissected all of these muscles on animal cadavers, and you will get more information from these videos. So if you have any question about these muscles, go ahead and write them in the comments, and I will try my best to answer them. Don't forget to stay safe and to share this information with your colleagues, and yeah, see you later. Bye bye for now.